At the Daily Express, Christian Calgie and the Leeds Westminster editor, Zoe Grunwald. Great to have you with us, as always. Let's kick off. The front page of The Times, Zoe, hospital funds tied to patient satisfaction. And it's kind of totalling up each operation. So a birth, a straightforward natural birth, £2,000, £3,000, and at the other end, £9,000 for a caesarean. And this is all going to potentially be linked into how people feel about their experiences.
Yeah, so this is part of Keir Starmer's 10-year plan for the NHS, which has been quite a long time in the making, and he's going to set it out next week, hopefully to take some, I'm sure they're hoping it will take some attention away from the big row over welfare spending. And there's lots of stuff in here, including emphasis on prevention and emphasis on community care rather than hospitals. But one of the kind of eyebrow-raising elements of this is, as you say, patients will be contacted after they've had a procedure, whatever that will be, asking whether how their treatment was, whether it was good enough for the hospital to receive full payment. So it will be linked to the standard of treatment that the patient received. I'm sure this is going to cause quite a lot of discussion because, obviously, there will be an argument that there are fundamental crises in the NHS with recruitment, with retention, resources. If those are affecting the quality of the procedures that patients have, is taking away more money an answer? It's a lot of stick, but if the problems are very deep-rooted, funding, resources or whatever, is that going to make treatment better, or is it going to cause a kind of death spiral in operations and practices?
And there's another line in here as well, which is another part of this plan, is to pay doctors and nurses depending on their success in bringing down waiting lists, which I would find actually quite a worrying proposal, because we actually know waiting lists and hospitals are often worse in the poorest parts of the country where people live more unhealthy lifestyles. So arguably you could actually see a worsening of geographic disparities if you attract the best doctors to the poshest places because they have lower waiting lists. So I think all of this is quite astonishing. I imagine the BMA's reaction if Rishi Sunak had proposed this a few years ago.
And the NHS is all linked also, for patients in particular, to an emotion.
Yes.
And at the root of that is how people feel when they come away, which isn't often linked with the actual experience that they had.
No,
and that's to weigh up that, I think, is quite difficult.
And dissatisfaction in the NHS is really chronically low and has been for a long time, even as things like waiting lists have gone down slightly, even as there have been 2 million more GP appointments. People are still fundamentally unhappy with the NHS, and whether that's something you can just fix with these proposals overnight and then removing funding as a result of what they say, I think it could actually make things a lot worse.
OK, Christian, take us to the Daily Telegraph. Sir Jim Mackey saying that criticism towards the NHS, they're deaf to any kind of criticism, that patients feel like they're an inconvenience. If you've tried to get a GP appointment and get past the receptionist, you're winning if you get by there. And also, like, the digitalisation of the NHS. All of this is core to that 10-year plan that Zoe was talking about. But this is quite strong lines, isn't it?
It's strong, but I think it's accurate. There's a fantastic line in here, which is, if we lose the population, we've lost the NHS, which sounds like something you'd hear in a sort of Hollywood movie trailer. So the new head of the health service says it's often too deaf to criticism, it wastes lots of money, it's fossilised, it's frittering away huge amounts of money on bureaucracy. And one of the things I think is quite astonishing about the NHS at the moment, or about wider politics, is 10 years ago, reform would not have been anywhere where they are in the polls the moment they were accused of wanting to privatise the NHS. And Farage is quite open about look, it's fundamentally broken. We need to copy other more European systems where you have a sort of private insurance element, and it's not denting them. And I think that's a huge reflection of existential concerns about the NHS now. And if you look at polling, actually, for the first time, especially a lot of young voters think the NHS will not be free at the point of use in 30 years' time. There's a huge pessimism about the NHS that I don't think there's ever been. Even, I know things were bad when the Tories lost power in '97 and Labour came in and they drove up satisfaction. But going back to the original story we were just talking about in terms of satisfaction with outcomes, I just wonder if the British public have started to... we call the NHS our national origin. I just wonder if atheism is starting to grow.
And Zoe, that 30 billion cash injection into the NHS, will that be enough, do you think, to shake things up, reform, as so many people feel that they need?
It sounds like a significant sum, but actually, if you think about, the kind of yearly budget of the NHS, which is running into the hundreds of billions, I mean, it kind of doesn't really touch the size. And there is lots of stuff that Labour want to do, which are structural things. We saw the reorganisation of NHS England. I think this focus on prevention is really important, especially as we have an ageing, sicker population with comorbidities. You do need to empower people to take health into their own hands, and you need to move it out of acute services like hospital into the community. But so in some ways, it's not just money, but money is a big part of it. And one of the real issues and retention of doctors and nurses, which, the more you talk about things like taking money off and increasing, the sort of stick element of trying to improve the NHS, the more you're going to see disheartened doctors and nurses leaving the service.
Yeah,
and the total bill by the end of this Parliament for the NHS is 232 billion quid, which I think, memory serving me right, will be about 49% of all government spending. So actually, Labour have to prove over the next few years that more money equals better outcomes. And if it doesn't, then I think we really are into unprecedented discussions about whether the NHS, as it's structured and as it was set up in 1948, can survive.
OK. Take me on to the Financial Times now. Nigel Farage wooing city bosses. Who are these city bosses? Who's he wooing, Zoe?
So, yes, these are lots and lots of different kind of people within the city who he's hoping to... The kind of business leaders who he's talking about trying to give them ministerial roles if there is a reform government. The plan echoes Gordon Brown's government of all talents. So they want people who have real, what they say is kind of like lived experience, business experience to come and to modernise government. And, of course, this is all part of Farage's kind of efficiency savings approach to government as well. He wants less civil servants, more people who kind of know the finance system and can run government, I guess, like a business. Plenty for me to criticise there.
But I love this line. Reform declined to comment, but Farage told the Financial Times that he was having ongoing discussions with a frustrated business community. Who are these people?
Well, I think the entire business community is frustrated at the moment. But the other thing that's worth mentioning, of course, is that actually reform are making the markets and the city quite nervous. They have a lot at the moment of what are perceived as unfunded pledges, spending pledges, tax cut pledges, and it is the single biggest bit of work that reform need to do between now and the next election is to ensure that if Nigel Farage entered Downing Street in 2029, you don't immediately have a Kwasi Liz Truss type market panic over what's about to come. So I think that's part of it. And the other point is that reform are potentially, and I know this sounds absurd, but these are the times we're living in, we're looking at reform entering government from having 5 MPs to over 325 MPs, absolutely none of whom have ever had government experience before. And Farage will not be able to populate a government of over 100 ministers of people that have just been elected. He will have to put a load of people in the Lords with relevant experience to make everyone more confident.
I do think it's interesting that we don't have specific names here, not even...
That's what I was trying to get at, and whether that is the business community a little bit concerned and not wanting to be linked with reform.
I think that's completely right. There might be conversations going on, but whether anybody actually wants to put their neck on the line and say, yes, I'm happy to fall behind a reform government and fall behind Nigel Farage, I think is a different story. And you probably wouldn't get that with the Tories or Labour so much.
OK. Let's move on then to the Daily Express. Front page, Britain will bake in 36 degrees Celsius heat. It's a scorcher, is it, Christian?
Yes, we are approaching... Well, I suppose it's the new normal, isn't it? We had that 40-degree day in 2022, I think, and now parts of Britain are going to hit 36 degrees on Monday. London will be a slightly cooler 31, 32 degrees.
But bear in mind, further up north, Greater Manchester, Scotland... I'm hearing 16 degrees. That's positively winter, isn't it?
It's quite warm for Manchester.
So Parliament does not have behind the scenes reveal here, Parliament does not have air conditioning. So he works in a 19th century Victorian palace. I'm not looking forward to this, but Spain may hit 47 degrees.
Goodness.
And I suppose the serious point is that with with global warming.
Well, on that note, Christian, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for your company. Thank you for yours at home. We'll see you after a very short break.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.